Many of my videos are about how polytheists tell their history and religion in literature, poems, opera, plays, movies. They also use their bloodliners to act out these stories. I think it's very important to understand who these people are and what they believe, which is why I do these videos. In this video, I will cover Sir Walter Scott, 1st Baronet and Scottish poet, novelist, and historian, and Freemason, of the ancient Scottish border clan, Clan Scott. The Latin word Scoti originally referred to the Celts. I will also cover the occult actress Tilda Swinton of the ancient Scottish clan Swinton. Sir Walter Scott's mother was descended from Clan Swinton. Tilda's great-great-great-grandfather was Sir Walter Scott's uncle. Clan Swinton is an ancient Anglo-Scots family that can trace lineage to the 800s. Tilda Swinton is a direct descendant of Robert the Bruce, King of Scots, from 1306 to 1329. Clan Swinton were the Anglo-Saxons descended from the prominent nobles of the Kingdom of Northumbria, which is the modern-day border between Scotland and England, also known as the Merse. Ernulf de Swinton was the first recorded instance of Scottish knight. Sir John Swinton was a soldier and statesman during the reigns of Robert II and Robert III of Scotland, and he appears in a poem by Sir Walter Scott, The Lay of the Last Minstrel. Tilda Swinton's father is Sir John Swinton of Kimmergame, a major general of the British Army, member of the Royal Victorian Order, a dynastic order of knighthood established by Queen Victoria, Vampiric Vicky. He's Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Sir John Swinton was Lord Lieutenant of Berwickshire and escorted the Stone of Scone back to Scotland in 1996, and that's the stone that the British monarchs are coronated on. Tilda Swinton's grandfather was Captain George Sitwell Swinton, commander of the Order of the British Empire, deputy lieutenant, long-serving Scottish politician, and officer of arms. Her maternal great-great-grandfather is John Hutton Balfour, whose Fellowship of the Royal Society and Royal Society of Edinburgh, a professor of botany at Oxford, and yes, he is related to Lord Balfour of the Balfour Declaration. Tilda Swinton's great-great-grandfather, Archibald Campbell Swinton, was Fellowship of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, Deputy Lieutenant, Scottish author and politician, also with a connection to Sir Walter Scott. And what is that connection? Sir Walter Scott published Thomas the Rhymer in his return to Elfland as a poem in 1802. Sir Archibald Swinton published Men of the Merse in 1858, which is also about Thomas the Rhymer. But the legend of Thomas the Rhymer is very old, originally written in the 1200s and again in the 1400s, because they tell the same story over and over. Copies of that story are at Harvard, National Library of Scotland, University of Edinburgh, Oxford University, and the British Library. Thomas the Rhymer was Sir Thomas of Earlston, who was alive in real life around 1220. He was a Scottish bard who sang poems and played the lyre, a reputed prophet. The legend of Thomas the Rhymer is that he descends into the underworld to take residence with the Queen of Elfland and receive supernatural knowledge of future events, including the weather, so divination. Notice this Queen of Elfland is like the elves from Lord of the Rings. The story also involves his adventures as a knight, victory over dragons and giants, his love inspired by a magic potion, as well as his 7-year stay in Elfland. Some of the prophecies attributed to Thomas the Rhymer in real life are the death of Alexander III in 1286, the succession of Robert the Bruce to the throne of Scotland, which occurred in 1306, and remember, Robert the Bruce is a progenitor to Clan Swinton and Tilda Swinton, and also the rule of Britain by Scottish King James I, which happened in 1603. a couple of theories about who the actual elf queen that Thomas met in the underworld are. One, she was Ursel, the German equivalent of Artemis, or the white goddess, a mother goddess associated with the moon in Welsh literature, which reminds me of the White Witch from the Chronicles of Narnia, played by Tilda Swinton. So let's look at a few of her roles to understand why she was cast this way given her bloodline. And by the way, Tilda Swinton attended Cambridge, sister school of Oxford, and was classmate of Lady Diana Spencer in high school. So she played the White Witch. She played another witch in Suspiria, which I covered in another video. She played Gabriel in the movie Constantine. She played Eve, the vampire, in the Only Lovers Left Alive vampire movie. According to Jim Jarmusch, the screenplay writer, her character is a 2,000-year-old ancient druid. But her character is also Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein. This tells me that Mary Shelley was also likely a druid, maybe possessed by the same 2,000-year-old druid. This is the Swinton family crest. It's 3 boars. Boars represent druids in heraldry, so that fits. Notice the colors of the vampire in the movie Only Lovers Left Alive that she is wearing are also her clan colors. That's not an accident. That's intentional. She also wears white gloves in that movie, which is symbolic of Freemasonry. Speaking of vampires, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent about blood. Thanks to a friend who lives in Liverpool who pointed out blood is made up of mostly plasma, the 5th element, which makes up 55% of blood. One theory is that demons travel in plasma, which makes up 99% of the visible matter in the universe. If demons travel in plasma, then blood for the person possessed by a demon like a vampire could be a type of medium or conduit for that demon, which would facilitate their continued operation within the body of a human presenting as a vampire. Vampires show up in occult art a lot, movies, plays, opera, and album art, and most times involving these bloodliners that I go over on this channel. And so do orbs show up in occult art, manifesting as spirit beings associated with witchcraft. And there's also a theory that orbs are plasma. Stars and the space between are made of plasma, often called the interstellar and intergalactic medium plasma is. Examples of plasma on Earth include orbs, lightning, and the aurora borealis. That's why orbs are sometimes referred to as ball lightning. But they are intelligent because people summon them. See my video titled Falling Angels. Now we can cover Sir Walter Scott, 1st Baronet, born in 1771, a member of Clan Scott of the Merse, which is on the border of Scotland and England. His mother was Anne Rutherford, descended from Clan Swinton. He was educated at the University of Edinburgh and was Fellowship of the Royal Society and Society of Antiquities of Scotland and a major Freemason. This is his coat of arms. It has a mermaid, and I think that's a giant. And who is that Queen of Heaven at the top of the knight helmet, holding the sun and the moon? At the top it says, in Latin, Reparabit cornua Phoebe, in Latin, and that translates to English, Phoebe will repair her horns. Phoebe will repair her horns. Phoebe was a Titan goddess of intellect and prophecy, daughter of Titans Uranus, Sky, and Gaia Earth, the grandmother of the Olympian gods Apollo and Artemis, associated with the oracle at Delphi. Her name means bright or shining, linking her to radiant intellect and foresight. Unbelievable. This is Sir Walter Scott's monument in Edinburgh. a Gothic ark. It's huge. There's a statue of him in the middle. This is his huge monument in Glasgow. So he was involved in retelling the same stories that Tilda's great-great-great-grandfather wrote about, Thomas the Rhymer. So Walter Scott also wrote The Lady of the Last Minstrel, or The Lay of the Last Minstrel, which was the history of Sir John Swinton, and another dude, Michael Scott of Clan Scott. And Michael Scott was also known as the Wizard. He was a scholar, mathematician, and philosopher, known as a great intellect in the early 1200s in real life. He was educated at Oxford. This is an image of him in the Bodleian Library of Oxford, doing as above, so below. He served as science advisor and court astrologer to Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire. In legend, he brought his friends food from spirits of the royal kitchens of France and Spain. He's said to have turned a coven of witches to stone, which have become the stone circle named Long Meg and her daughters in Cumbria, which is northwest England on the Scottish borders. He appears in Dante's Divine Comedy in the 8th circle of hell, reserved for sorcerers, astrologers, and false prophets. In The Lay of the Last Minstrel, Sir Walter Scott described this wizard as addicted to studies of judicial astrology, alchemy, and fortune-telling, passing for a skillful magician. He credits the wizard with conquering a demon after it split Alden Hill into 3 distinctive cones. In the book, Scott wrote that the Scottish borders, any work on the Scottish borders of great labor or antiquity is ascribed to either Michael Scott, the wizard, Sir William Wallace, or the devil. Sir Walter Scott was also author of Ivanhoe, Rob Roy, Waverley, Old Mortality, The Heart of Midlothian, and The Bride of Lammermoor, along with narrative poems Marmion, The Lady of the Lake, Thomas the Rhymer, and The Lay of the Last Minstrel, and The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, which he published on behalf of another author. He had a major impact on European and American literature. Most of those books that I just read off are classics, recommended reading for a public high school. This is an illustration from The Bride of Lammermoor, titled Ravenswood Encounters the Apparition of Alice, and an apparition is a demon. He also wrote a poem about the Lady of the Lake, who's a powerful and mysterious figure in Arthurian legend, depicted as a water spirit, fairy, and enchantress who resides in the lake surrounding Avalon, known for bestowing King Arthur with Excalibur. Blackwood's Magazine was the publisher for Sir Walter Scott and Emily Bronte, author of Wuthering Heights, who took writing inspiration from Sir Walter Scott. And that is a druidic story, Wuthering Heights. The Blackwood family is an offshoot bloodline of the Clan Douglas of Scotland, also an ancient noble bloodline and one of Scotland's most powerful. This is their coat of arms, a green salamander surrounded by flames. Sir James Douglas was born in 1286, and he was the first to be named the Black for his dark deeds, which is where the name Blackwood originated. According to Sir Walter Scott, Sir James Douglas became the boogeyman of a northern English lullaby. Sir James Douglas was comrade in arms of Robert the Bruce, King of the Scots, who Tilda Swinton is related to. Robert Blackwood is the 6th and youngest Lord of Blackwood and Raventree Hall in A Song of Fire and Ice, which are the books that the Game of Thrones series is adapted from, because it's, their polytheist history. They have to tell it over and over. Sir Walter Scott also published Ivanhoe in 1819, which is set in 12th century England during the reign of King Richard I. Richard the Lionheart. The story follows the disinherited Saxon knight Wilfred of Ivanhoe as he returns from the Crusades to reclaim his inheritance. The plot also involves Richard the Lionheart, Robin Hood, who assists Ivanhoe, Rebecca, a beautiful and courageous Jewish woman who is rescued by Ivanhoe, and a conflicted Templar knight who is rival to Ivanhoe. This is a painting of Robin Hood and his merry men entertaining Richard the Lionheart in the Sherwood Forest, inspired by the novel. Robin Hood and the Chamberlains are in the realm of the Ring Lord's genealogy, and that appears after the Elf Kings in that book. And at the top of the Robin and the Chamberlains genealogy are the Bodwins, who held the King of Jerusalem title from 1100 to 1118 AD. Then that genealogy continues on down through the De Veres, who are earls and dukes of Oxford. The genealogy then moves to the house of Vlad of Wallachia, or Vlad Dracul. I'm going to read the preface of The Men of the Merse, written by Sir Archibald Swinton. Quote, "History begins at home. If we want a boy to someday know of the families of the Herods and Caesars, let him start by learning who his own grandfather was. The same attention should not be bestowed on the life of each village Hampton." And a village Hampton is a humble rural person. "But rather on the characters and actions of those who have swayed the rod of empire or waked to ecstasy the living lyre." End of quote. And a lyre is a bard. Sir Archibald Swinton of Clan Swinton, great-great-grandfather to Tilda Swinton, was also a bard, and so was Sir Walter Scott, the Freemason, telling the polytheist history and religion of their bloodline. The secret commonwealth of elves, fairies, and fauns, written in the 1600s, was by a Scottish so-called priest, Robert Kirk. Kirk means church in Scottish. He had a master's from the University of Edinburgh. In his so-called ministry, he worked with people in the Scottish Highlands who had extrasensory skills such as remote viewing, precognition, and close encounters with mysterious, non-human entities. He died before he could publish this book, so Sir Walter Scott published it in 1815. The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies describes Anunnaki as sky people who are unseen, non-human overlords. It describes how they can shapeshift, manipulate the senses of those who encounter them, nurture human intelligence, but can also be predatory. So, now does it make sense why Queen Elizabeth I, the cousin of King James I, who was the King of Scotland before becoming King of England, why she was known as the Fairy Queen? She even wore wings with her gowns, and this gown also has a snake on the sleeve with an apple. And this gown has eyeballs and ears embroidered into it also. Thanks for listening.